off here and then get out of the way for a little bit. All right. So thank you guys all again for getting together. Initially here, what we want to do is have our CEO, Alan Normandin, speak to you and answer any questions you might have about the recent news of the acquisition of Echo by Therapy Brands. And it's a very exciting time for us. And we see the future as being very bright, but I will let Alan do a better description of that in a moment. And then when he's done, he's going to leave us because he's got a commitment at the top of the hour. And then Scott will take over and walk us through Inform's client portal and appointment reminders. All right. And I am recording, so that's a good thing. So, Alan, I know you know some of these folks. Maybe you don't know a lot of them. I'm not sure. But anyway, let me turn it over to Alan, our CEO, and let him take the wheel.
Thank you, Rick. So as Rick said, you should have received 2 emails last week. Hopefully one from me first, announcing that we had just been purchased by Therapy Brands. And then you should have received a welcome email from Jeff Shorman, the CEO of Therapy Brands. So if you don't know who Therapy Brands is, it is a company that's been in business for many years in the behavioral health, mental health, substance use, PTOT, and ABA field. And we have been speaking with Therapy Brands for roughly 8 or 9 months to see whether this was going to be a good fit for EchoVantage, as well as the employees of Echo. George Epstein, the founder and chairman of Echo, was in his early 70s and has been looking to see whether he could find a good relationship with an organization to be able to take over what Echo has done for the past 42 years, and that's really to build a product that is able to provide our customers the tools that they need to provide the best possible services to your clients. And we've been speaking with a number of organizations over the last year. Therapy Brands is truly the best fit for the product. They're taking EchoVantage and they are going to make it the premier product within Therapy Brands. And that is the product they are going to move forward across all their markets. So, today you have mental health, substance use, foster care, family service functionality, and IDD functionality. They are going to extend it to include the PTOT, ABA, and some inpatient functionality also. So they're already looking and building roadmap to be able to build that functionality into EchoVantage over the next 12 months. So they are really fast tracking much of the development that with Echo would have potentially taken us years to put in. They have the resources to be able to do it at a much faster pace. As far as the people that you work with, that's going to stay the same. You're still going to reach out to the support department and work with the people that you have in support. We'll probably be adding people to the support department, which will be nice. In the hosting environment, you're still going to be working with Cliff and Barry and Raul. You only have Barry, though, till March, because that's when Barry's retiring. So, but again, we will backfill those with additional resources that we have within Therapy Brands. Therapy Brands has a number of other products. They have a dedicated telehealth solution. They have, will be moving off of Dr. First onto Apex because that's the e-prescribing solution that Therapy Brand has, and Therapy Brands will be issuing us a letter here shortly. We haven't received it yet, but once they find word that we are a Therapy Brand products, Dr. First will not allow us to use them after 12 months. So we're going to be forced to move to Apex for our e-prescribing solution. And, we're going to have communication out to everybody ahead of time. We're going to be doing demos of the product. There's going to be training demos once it is built into EchoVantage. We're going to make this a very smooth transition for the users that are using Dr. First.
Is there like a timeline on that? Do you have like a rough estimate on when that change is going to be?
I don't yet, because we're just sitting down with Therapy Brands next week and starting to look at what the roadmap is going to look like. We do know, because Therapy Brands has been through this before, that we will receive a cease and desist order from Dr. First. But because of our contracts, they can't push that faster than a 12-month period.
Okay.
So, but the idea here is, as your renewals come up, hopefully, I'm envisioning around a June timeframe, I would like to see the new solution in place. So as your renewals come in, we can start moving those people over to Apex, so that you're not incurring double costs. This is actually an exciting time for Echo, because there's a lot we've wanted to do with EchoVantage. EchoVantage has really made a splash in the market. We are winning sales that we have not been able to win in years, because of EchoVantage has a current look and feel. It has the functionality the customers are looking for. And so we're winning against NetSmart and Qualifax and Credible, where those have been difficult competitors for us if we had looked 5 years ago. Therapy Brands is going to continue to enhance the product to meet both your requirements and the new requirements that come down the road. So in the end, you guys are going to end up with a much better product than what we were able to provide by ourselves to you. And I do truly believe that. The Therapy Brands is a private equity owned company. So, we were the last holdout in this field. We were the only vendor that was left that was privately owned. Everybody else, every other competitor that we typically go up against has been private equity owned. So now Echo is also private equity owned. The difference is the private equity firm that is behind Therapy Brands is KKR. And if you don't know who KKR is, they are one of the 2 largest private equity firms in the world. So they currently have $459 billion invested in businesses across the country. And that's just not resources we had access to before. So obviously you've had a week to for this to sink in that that Echo is now Therapy Brands. What kind of questions do you have, or what concerns do you have? And let's see if I'm able to alleviate any of those.
Oh, where to start?
I only have until 4 o'clock, Heather.
I'll say Heather's probably the one with the best questions here. So,
well, some of my questions you've already kind of answered. Dr. First was one of my questions / concerns. What is, like, are they going to change the look of Vantage? Is it going to stay Vantage, or is it going to be a whole new look? Like, are we going to have to recreate the wheel here?
No. We don't have a product called Vantage, but we do have a product called EchoVantage. One word.
I never correct her on that. I just let them roll.
We had to do that because when we transitioned, everybody kind of like couldn't, which one are you talking about? The old system or the new system? So we always just called it Vantage so everybody knew what was going on. That's just where I came from.
You're not the only one that calls it Vantage, and I always have to correct people. But the name of the product is going to stay Echo Vantage. I was on a meeting earlier today. They are not looking to change the name. They're not looking to change the look and feel of the product at all. That's why they bought it. They were drawn in on on how we developed the product. And so they're just looking to continue the look and feel, but add on additional functionality into the product. You may see the logo change a little so that it looks a little more consistent with the fonts that they have for the company name, but the product name is going to stay the same, and the product itself, the look and feel, will stay the same.
What about like form designer and that kind of thing? Like, will that stay the same, or are the forms that we are currently creating or have created, like, is that going to be something that has to change down the road? Do we halt creating forms until we know more? That kind of thing.
Before you answer that, I want to add on to that with her questions. Is there also a form catalog that they have that's available to us too?
They will be developing forms because they're already marketing Echo Vantage to some of their opportunities that they have. And some of those opportunities are, for example, in the ABA market. So they're already starting to develop forms, or will be developing forms with Form Designer, and we'll be adding those forms into the existing catalog.
So they will be using Form Designer.
They will be using Form Designer. Now, that's not to say, Heather, that Form Designer, as you know, is, we're looking at 8-10-year-old technology in Form Designer, and Form Designer does need an upgrade. And some of the forms you may have heard, I'm trying to think what they call the new Form Designer. There is a new Form Designer in Echo Vantage already that they have used on some of the forms that are in Echo Vantage. But it doesn't have FD Next. Thank you. So FD Next is what we've been envisioning as the replacement for Form Designer. It's not near the features and functions that Form Designer has now at all, Heather. It's going to take, a considerable amount of time to build the UI and then build the features into that product. So right now and again, I'm just getting ready to start the roadmap meetings next week, but I can tell you, Form Designer has not been brought up to put onto the roadmap for the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay. What are we going to, or you probably don't know the exact answer to this, but what do you foresee in like the cost? Like are our user costs going to go up? Are that kind of thing? We just went through a budget season. Like,
yep.
How is this going to affect us?
Again, this week with their prospects, they asked me what our cost was to compare it against their costs. From what I can tell so far, and obviously right now we're in a very fluid period, I don't see any increases for the next year. They're going to stay with the pricing we have now. Now, obviously Echo's costs have gone up over the last year. The hosting costs have gone up on Azure, and our Microsoft licensing costs have gone up. So we were looking at a 2.5% increase for software maintenance agreement, which again won't cover the cost of Azure or the Microsoft licensing, but it's going to make it so that we're not losing as much as we are right now as it relates to those costs. But we're not looking at any additional cost to that, Heather.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Or did I cover everybody's?
Yeah, please bring them forward. This is the best person to ask them to right now, for sure.
We have a lot of changes coming down the road. in a short amount of time for our state reporting. And, you know, that's making us a little nervous.
Mhm. Is this
and-
changes to whips?
Yeah.
PPS, yeah.
Oh, it is, okay.
I guess, are they, you know, I don't know, even know how to answer this. Like, I just feel very uneasy about this, but you're telling me like, there's really no staff changes. There's really, I mean, to start somebody all the way over with the knowledge
Right.
that your team already has about whips and the complexity of it, like, yeah.
I
don't
can
know.
assure you right now, Heather, you're going to continue working with Julie and Bruce on whatever you need for whips changes. Because that's who you worked with to develop the whips we have today. And, you know, we're one of the few vendors that have been successful
Absolutely.
in getting whips to work in the state. And, you know, we're not going to break that at all. Those people have, like you said, the knowledge on how it needs to work. Julie's going to continue working to gather the changes and the requirements through you, Heather, and it'll be fed to Bruce, and Bruce will modify the routines that we have on the back end that's generating that data for you.
Okay.
Yep.
Kelly,
And again,
Jeff, do you have, I'm sorry, go ahead, Alan, excuse me.
You know, if you want to have a one-on-one with me, or if a question comes up after this meeting, you have my email in this meeting invite. Send me out an email. I'm more than happy to jump on a Teams call and have a one-on-one with you, or, you know, your CEOs, your senior management, whatever the case may be. I'm open to that. I've always been open to that. I mean, Heather has reached out to me several times, and I just want to make sure that everybody on this call is aware that I'm very approachable. I'm very black and white. I'm not going to make up answers for you. If I don't have an answer, I'll get it for you. And if I give you an answer, it's what I believe and what I know as of today. And I'm not one of those that's going to make up a response because it'll be easier for me to get off the phone with you. That's not my style.
Kelly, Jeff, as directors of your departments, do you guys have any specific questions for Alan today that are lurking in your minds?
I think Heather asked some very excellent questions, certainly questions that were on our mind. Cost is truly a concern. I appreciate the sentiment that cost should not increase in 2023, but that makes me nervous about what 2024 might look like. I'm hoping that would be communicated well in advance if there's going to be increase, whether it's slight or significant. I'm sure Jeff can attest that our levy is pretty tight. So that is something we would want to know sooner rather than later. And I'm curious about the Apex transition and wondering if that would be an additional cost to counties to make that transition. Are we going to have to pay for Dr. First for 2023 and then also Apex in 2023? And if so, if we have any idea or ballpark on what that would look like. And then hoping that it is easy to transition to Apex, because working with providers and prescribers can be challenging, and we want to make sure that they can prescribe. So that's something I'm just a little nervous about.
And I'll get some more information on that. What I'll try to do is I'll ask Rick to pull me in, excuse me, next month to this meeting. And let me try to get some more information on Apex. I mean, like I had mentioned, the whole idea is to do a demo of Apex to our customers so you can see how full featured the product is. I also want to know if there's any shortcomings in Apex that we need to build in before we make the switch from Dr. First, because obviously we have a year to before we have to make the transition. And if there are features that you're currently using that your prescribers absolutely need, and for one reason or another, you don't see it in Apex, let me know. Because I'll dig into it, and if we need to make sure that that feature is on the roadmap, then we'll get it on the roadmap. And then I'll also find out pricing wise, how the pricing compares with the Doctor First pricing.
Yeah, that would be great. I think it will also be helpful for us to maybe see if any of our pharmacies also take prescriptions from Apex to see if we just want to make sure it's going to work easily on our end. So Heather, that might be another project, huh?
Sounds like it.
And
Um,
just
I-
I was just gonna say, just an FYI, on the next meeting, we do not have one in December, so you know, Alan, because it's the holiday week, it's between Christmas and New Year's, so we're not looking at our next meeting until January 25th.
Okay.
However, if we needed to, we could probably make room for one sooner, based on you all's needs and wants and desires, so.
I do have another quick question. Therapy brands, have they worked with government entities before? You, Alan, know that how difficult some of the setup has been for us because of the different criterias we have to meet. So I was just kind of wondering about that.
I believe they do have some governments that they work with. I don't think it's to the same level of organizations that we have here at Echo. So there will need to be some education to therapy brands around working with government entities.
Yeah, well, I know at least one of the other therapy brands products is used by a number of counties in Florida.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. And they also have a public health product, which would definitely imply that they're working with counties. So.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Not trying to cut us short, but I guess Alan's got about not quite 5 minutes, but.
No, I think all of my questions at this point anyway have been answered.
Well, you know how to get a hold of me, Heather.
I do.
And again, if anyone wants to reach out, please don't hesitate. So
Well,
thank you guys very much, and I will let you continue your meeting then.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right.
I'm also going to quick pop off to join something else.
Okay.
So, thank you for arranging this and getting Alan to attend. I appreciate that.
Of course. Glad you could join, Kelly, and anytime you guys want to huddle up, we will. Just let Heather know and we'll make it happen, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good. Good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for that. And now I guess we'll turn it over to the fun stuff.
Okay.
And get Scott going with a little bit of information to share and show about Informs and Client Portal, engaging
First of
with.
all, I want to know if he's going to play a little guitar for us.
One of these days, we'll schedule an extra 5 minutes. We'll do. Send in your requests. All right. Well, thank you for asking me to attend today. Rick asked me to show Informs, Client Portal, SMS texting, and I thought I'd throw in as a bonus web forms because those are kind of the suite of tools around client engagement. It's something we've been working hard on since before COVID, is how do we communicate with people who cannot always come into your brick and mortar facility. And we've come up with a number of different tools to be able to do that. Let me share my screen first of all, and just get verification that you can see everything I am showing you. Can you see Echo Vantage on the screen?
Yep.
Great. So I'll start with how we use Informs and the client portal and email, attaching forms to emails, and how if you have someone in your waiting room that you want to hand a tablet and get their basic information, or have them complete an assessment, you can do all of that. So within Echo Vantage, we have the ability to configure client portal access. So you go here, you can turn it on or off for each individual client. By default, their username and email, well, I'm sorry, it'll show you the emails that are on file for that individual, and their username will default to the email. Now, it isn't obvious, but you can change the usernames. Okay, we get a lot of situations where there are parents or guardians that have multiple kids whose records they want to be able to check. And occasionally, if you don't realize that, what occasionally has happened is they've tried to create a second account with the same username. So in this case, you can just see I've changed it to D Gale for Dorothy Gale as the username. When we do that and we create the account, it will send an email to this address so they can set up their account and their password. Okay. Now, the passwords for client portal access are a little different than the passwords you use for staff access. The NIST standard for that is a little bit looser because the policy decision was made that we want to make it a little bit easier for clients to be able to remember their passwords and be able to access that information. So instead of having to be uppercase, lowercase, a number and a character, it will, excuse me, and a special character, it will only require they put in something that's between 8 and 64 characters so they can remember it easier. So they'll set that up, and then they'll have access to the client portal. Okay? Now, once that access has been set up, you can then share forms with the client. So there's a button here. You get to decide which user groups get to share those forms, and they can share any of the forms that are in the visual health record, configured within the visual health record for them. Okay. So for Dorothy, I'm going to send her a couple of forms to complete. I'm going to have her complete a couple of the admission forms. I want her to do a no-show cancellation policy, and I want her to do a telehealth consent. Okay. So I've selected these two forms. You'll notice there are icons here for the signature. I can select that and request that the client sign that. And I have a choice of sending that to the client portal, MyCare, which is another tool which we'll discuss a little bit in the future. You can send it as an email link, or you can send it to any of the devices that you have configured to use in your facility. So in this particular case, I'm going to send it as a link in the client portal. And because I've checked these, it says the client will be requested to sign. Okay. I'm going to share it. And that form is now available on the client portal. I'm going to log out here, and I'm going to log in now into the client portal. And I'm going to go log in as Dorothy Gale. And there's her password. And now when she goes into the client portal, she can see the items that I've made available for her to view. This is configurable by you. So if you don't want people to see the medication and health information, if you deal with clients who are all state funded and they don't have any financial responsibility, you might choose not to show the client balance. Okay. But I can see I have 11 new messages. Now, the other thing that's supported by this is the ability for the client to send a message to their caregiver, okay, or receive messages from their caregiver. So Dorothy, I'm logged in as Dorothy. She's going to use the plus button to choose from among her providers and select a subject that you want to classify, and she can put in a message. It's my appointment tomorrow in person or telehealth. And you'll notice, just like within Echo Vantage, if I misspell a word, spell check is built in to the forms. So I'm going to send that, and that's going to go to my inbox because I chose that client, and I'll show you in a moment.
Does
client-
that go into the client's chart anywhere or just stays
No,
strictly in the
no.
portal?
It stays in the form, yes. That's
Okay.
right. Good question. Now the balance is displayed here. We are working with another with a potential partner to add the ability for clients to pay their balance by credit card. Do you have anybody that pays for their services? Okay, so that is coming, and I don't have a specific date for you, but and then they can see their upcoming appointments. Okay, so here I'll look at this one. She has one scheduled with me on 12/2. I can go over here and she has some options. She could update that. If she chooses update, she could request a reschedule, a cancellation, or other, right? And put in a note.
So
If she
where does
can,
that go when they,
I'll show you. It
Okay.
actually, yeah, there. So when you update, those messages will go to an email team that you configure to handle changes in scheduling. So it doesn't go back to necessarily to that clinician. If they confirm, and I don't know why that's broken now, but if they confirm, it actually updates the events table. And I'll show you one of the things that you can do with that as well.
okay,
If the client wants to request an appointment, they can specify which provider they want to see. They can put in a start date. So let's suppose they want to see somebody next week in the morning. They want to see me. They can send this, and that will go to your scheduling team so that they can put the individual on the schedule. Okay. The My Health section shows them their current medications. If they can go over here and request a renewal, okay. But she can't go in here and click this 5 times and get 5 renewals for her Lexapro. All right, you'll just go through, and that will go to a separate medications team that will review those. Okay, and you'll be able to set that up. And they can also view all of their medications that they've ever had. They can also view their continuity of care document. So here's the basic information, the ownership, the client, date of birth, race, ethnicity, contact information. And then they can see information on allergies, problems, diagnoses, certain types of assessments, their medications, and they can also see encounters. So here she can see when at what time she had different types of sessions. Okay. Now, for this particular tool, one thing I do want to let you know, a couple things. Number one, it is the continuity of care document. And there isn't really a place in the continuity of care document to send what we commonly refer to as an assessment. So a PHQ-9 or a Columbia Suicide Rating Scale is not really, it's a different lexicon. It's what the medical folks use as an assessment. The second thing is, keep in mind, this is going to be all or nothing. So if you do not want to share diagnosis information, for example, you would have to you could turn this off, but you would be turning off everything in the continuity care document. Does that make sense?
it does.
Those individual therapy sessions, they don't see the progress
No,
notes.
no.
Right? They just see the dates.
They just see the dates and the individual therapy session, and it does display the code, but and this I can show you where that gets set up in a service. When you set up a service definition, there's a checkbox for use for reporting, which probably didn't mean anything to you, but
Right.
now if you select that service will be included in the continuity of care document. Okay, and when you include it, you'll have a choice of sending out the the HCPC code or the CPT code, which means nothing to the client, the SNOMED code, which means nothing to the client, or the LOINC code. But if you're sharing the continuity care documents with other practitioners and they have a meaningful use certified application, they'll be able to read that information in and know what bill code was sent out for that client. Okay. So the final component of that is the forms. And you'll see the message, or Dorothy would see the message, that she has 2 assigned forms here. The telehealth consent and the no-show cancellation policy that I sent her. Each of these has an icon that indicates that I want her to sign that. So when we go to complete form, there are just a couple fields on this one. I'm going to put in the date, and you could pre-fill this if you wanted to, or you could have it default to today's date if you prefer. And then presumably the client will read this, they'll save it, and they can now sign that here. Okay. And it works the same way as signatures in Echo Vantage. You can use your mouse, you can use a Bluetooth pen, you can use your fingertip or your stylus if you're on a tablet. When she signs it, just like within Echo Vantage, this is now locked. Okay. We have the signature, the client's name, and the date and time that that was locked. So you can demonstrate to an auditor that nobody changed that form after the client signed it. And then the no-show cancellation policy, very similar. But you could also send assessments. So if you want somebody to complete a depression or anxiety screening or suicide screening, or maybe some more a basic demographic information that you want them to update, you can do that as well.
What if they sign it before they put the date in? Will it throw them an alert that it's not completed?
No, what'll happen is it'll go back into Echo Vantage. But what you can do, let me log out and I'll show you. I'll go back into Echo Vantage over, there we go, over here. So let's go find Dorothy. Oops. Go to the timeline. And you'll notice now I have a no-show cancellation policy starting today, right? And I have a new telehealth consent starting today. But let's suppose there was a mistake on this one. She didn't put a date in for that and just signed it, okay? You can give some of your staff the privilege to unlock that form, okay? Put in the error, client did not provide the correct information. I'm going to unlock it. And when I go back to share forms, I'm going to clear this because I've already gotten those signed. Okay. Or actually on this one, yeah, I'm going to clear that. And I'm going to go back to my admissions and try to remember that was the no-show cancellation policy. Was that the one that I, yeah, well, that one's already locked. It was the no-show, the telehealth consent. There we go. I could go back here, right, and remove that one and request that she sign it and share it with her again.
How do you fill in the date yourself before you send it?
Sure. So let's go down here. I'll fill in another form. Let's do, I suppose I just need a re-signature on, well, what's the best way to do this? Send for treatment. I'll just do another one. Informed consent. So I go here, put in the start date of today. That one defaults. It has Dorothy's information. I'll save that, okay? And now I'll go back here, share forms. That was the consent for treatment.
Mhm.
I can choose a new one, or I can choose the one that I just set up for her. And when I share that with her on the client portal, it'll have the start date and the end date on it already.
Can you view that while you're here to make sure that that's the right one that you were trying to do?
You cannot, no, you'd have to view it in the other form.
Okay.
This one would be probably a more practical example of when you would use that feature. So here's a release of information. So you get a request to get from Dr. Geisel to provide information about Dorothy. You can complete all of this information, put in complete the check boxes for purposes, limitations, disclosures, save it, right? And then when you go back over here to share forms, you can choose that form with the pre-filled information and send it off to her for a signature and send it on the client portal.
Now, when you save that on their timeline, though, it's going to appear like it's done if staff aren't digging and seeing that there's no signature, right?
It depends on whether you have set up your depictions to indicate if a document's been signed. Some of our customers do that. It's pretty simple. It's just
So
a matter of
Miranda would
linking.
be a lot like your services, how they change color if they.
Yeah,
don't show that.
exactly,
It'd be that
exactly.
same kind of depiction.
Okay.
So this is more, just kind of a little bit off topic, but under the VHR timeline, I can't remember. I have a couple of these that I've created, but I can't remember what they were. Let's go back to that. Oh my goodness, we have a bunch of these. No-show cancellation policy. Okay. So when you create your depictions, I just have a default in here, right? But I could create a depiction and we can get you the text for this, the script. For the filter condition, we'll look to see if there's a signature associated with that and turn it flashing purple, whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have something, stick out to the clinicians if we send documents and it's not signed,
Yep.
so that it stands out. That'd be great.
So, Rick, would you mind taking a note and reminding me to get that script to you so you can distribute it to the group?
Okay.
It's just a little snippet of SQL code that you can put in there. And it can be really useful for all kinds of documents. So for example, if we look at Dorothy's record again, and maybe there's been a comprehensive clinical assessment completed, but it's not signed, it's one color. If they have signed it, it's another color. Same with progress notes. We can do all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that would
Or we
be
can
really
teach-
nice.
Okay. We will do that. So that's one of the ways you can share forms. Another option is if you wanted to have outcomes. Oh, let's see. What do I have in here that would be interesting? Assessments and screening. So maybe I have a nursing, a health screening or a nutrition assessment that I want to send to Dorothy's primary care physician. In that case, I can use email link and I can select any of her contacts as the recipient. So here I have Meredith Gray, who's her primary care physician. Okay, I can share that document. Okay, and now it's sent an email to Meredith at my email address. There it is. So new forms are available. It'll identify the client. It would identify your organization, and it would give them a link to connect to that form. And there's also an automatic expiration. The default is 24 hours, but you can change that to, you can extend that if you want to. So I'm going to click that link as Meredith Gray. And what's going to happen is it's going to pop up with a request that I enter her date of birth. Okay. It's my daughter's birthday, so I have to remember that one. But here's the nutrition assessment, okay? And I want the individual I sent this to complete this assessment. There's something wrong with that form. It's not good. So I'll just put some stuff in here, and I'll say why can't I save that? There we go. I'll save it. And well, if I'd requested that they sign that document, then you could capture the signature and it would identify the person who was sent to. You say it's done. I can go log out, go back into Echo Vantage. That's just because I'm logging in using the old ID that I just had. I have those 3 linked. But in here, somewhere there's a nutrition assessment. Oh, where is it? It's part of intake.
You're back in September 19. I don't know if that means anything on the timeline.
Sure does. Oops. Try this again. There's my nutrition assessment is now part of Echo Vantage. And then the third
Really nice
option,
that just automatically went back in there.
the other option is you can set up, if you've seen supplemental users as one of the functions that's available, you can set up supplemental users either as a device or an individual. Okay. So here, if I want to share another document, let's suppose I want them to complete a CAGE, brief substance use screening. Okay. I can have that available on the iPad. Okay. And then what would happen is someone in your organization would pick up that device. They would log in using the iPad 1 login. Okay. And now that assessment is on the iPad. So they could complete this. You notice it totals the score for them and save it. When they say they're done, go back to Echo Vantage again. And find Dorothy. There we go. There's a new CAGE. It's back in Echo Vantage.
Nice.
Questions on how that works?
Mm-mm.
No.
And you can do that. Do all of you create your own informs, your own form designer forms? So when you go into Form Designer, you know where you can select whether you want it to be on the menu or the timeline. You can hold down the control key and have it available in several different places. If you have Informs enabled, you just add Informs and that will show up. Okay. So it can now be sent as an Informs form.
So you'd have to link it to both things, right? So like
Yep.
you would link it to timeline and informs.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Okay. So that's Informs. How to use other types of devices. The next thing I wanted to show you is another engagement tool that we developed about 6 months ago. And that is a tool that allows you to create a link on your website to a referral form. So we created, I didn't actually create it, Echo Care, which is your choice for behavioral health care, Echo's behavioral health services. There's nothing about us. We don't provide any services and we don't accept any donations, but we do have a request for services form here. So what you do is you provide us with the information that you want to be able to collect from a prospective new client. So here, this is a fairly simplistic version. We can make these contingent. We can have them, you can have multiple screens, depending on whether they're looking for family services or substance use disorder or whatever you want to do. But we can make fields required like first name and last name, create drop-down lists for gender. Social security number is going to be formatted as our dates and dates of birth, address, phone number, and etc. And then in this one's pretty simplistic, but what are the areas of concern that they're having? And then someplace to put in additional information like please contact me during the day. You'll also notice the ReCAPTCHA logo over here. That's to help prevent people from spamming your site. Okay. And we can also enable these so that clients can attach documents if you want to do that. So once they complete that information, there's a form that we would create for you in Echo Vantage. I just call this one request for services. And you can see all the requests that have been made with all that information that they completed on the website, okay? And then you can review that. And we have a second screen on this example that has contact log. So you can see who contacted them, who did they reach, what was the relationship, what was the description, what was the outcome of that. And then finally, disposition information, if you want to keep track of whether they were admitted, referred out, etc. What was the date, who were they, who made the decision, if they were referred out, why, and to whom. And then the other thing we can do with this is when that inquiry comes in, we also have a procedure, a stored procedure that will convert that to a client. So we can just take all of this information and populate the client profile and address information and so forth. Okay. So that's an option. There's a charge for that.
Can I ask you a question on that? Like,
Sure.
Is that like a link? So this Echo Care, is that like a link that we can put on like our county website, or how
Exactly. Just a link.
Yeah, there's
There's
no other, nothing else is done to your website except the link is placed in the appropriate place, right, Scott?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it is secure.
So in this, if somebody is trying to get set up for services, but they are already a client, will they stay here, or that's part of like that disposition is, they're already a client and then it kind of disappears so that this list doesn't.
We could certainly do that. What we would probably do is include a column here for status. So you can filter, just like you can on any of these forms. And if you had status admitted, you could filter on that and just see the people who were admitted. Or if you wanted to filter out the ones that were
Already clients,
already
right?
clients.
Already clients.
Yeah. What we generally do, Miranda, is we just set a flag in the table. So you have an audit trail. You can see what inquiries came in. Okay. Does that answer your question?
And do those names disappear if you create them as a client, or do they stay in that list?
We could do it a couple different ways. This is based on the table itself, but we could base it on a view, okay, and then attach back to the record, the unique ID, and be able to. Usually, you can edit this information, but the view would have a condition where if the status equals duplicate or status equals admitted, they go away.
Okay.
Do you know how much this Echo Care linkage, do you know the cost of it?
It depends on the complexity of your website and how much of the work you want to do yourself.
Complexity of the form, you mean, Scott, not the website.
Right.
Yeah,
the form on the website.
Form you want to have there.
Yes, thank you. So if you have 3 different forms, one for interagency referrals, one for outside providers, and one for clients, it gets a little expensive.
Right.
If you want to, collect a couple screens of information, they usually run the creation of those usually runs between $500 and $1,000 for the form, for the web form. Okay.
So, what if we created the form?
Yeah. Then that's a lot of our customers do that. They'll create the table.
Yeah, we have a form that's sort of something like what you're showing here already created. But I could see us doing something a little bit different for this Echo Care linkage. Basically same form, just a little different questions. But so if we created the form, I guess my question is, what's the cost for that linkage?
Yeah, and that depends. It's usually all in these projects have run somewhere between $750 and $1,500.
Okay. Is there like Like, is it just a one-time fee, do you know? Or is it,
There's a one-time fee for the configuration and setup. And then
Okay.
there is an ongoing maintenance, software maintenance for the maintenance of the Mirth channel, because it's a Mirth channel that does the work. Okay. It takes the information from the third-party database and imports it into Echo Vantage. But yeah, I would say approximately half of our customers that are using that tool have just given us the sort of a picture of what they want the form to look like,
Mhm.
and provided their tables, so we can map from the website into the table, and then you take it from there. You can create your own form if you want. You can create your stored procedures to create that, to turn them into a client, or we can do part of that for you, or however you want to do it.
Have you ever done this linkage with a county entity?
I don't think we have. What would be the difference for any other agency?
There's a lot
Other
of,
than
there's
taking
more
5 years for them
security.
to make a decision to do it. Yeah, I know.
Well, like they have the challenge with Power BI, Scott, as you know, it's just different for government entities than
Yeah.
there's a lot more
a private
security
sector.
steps we've got to
Yeah.
go through. So I was just wondering
Yeah,
if
in
you,
that, for the security, whoever Alan or Mark needs to talk to, they can speak directly to the security issues.
I really like that feature because we've been trying to figure out something to do. So I think that's a great feature.
It would
Yeah, we
save
had-
postage.
As we rolled this out, 2 of our customers jumped on it immediately because they've been working on a project for 6 months to be able to create their own website and pull the data in. So it's a very cost-effective solution. Any other questions before I move on to SMS texting? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to point out one other thing. Here's the message from Dorothy about, is my appointment in person or telehealth?
Oh,
And I
sure.
can just go here and reply and say, it is in person and you are late. Send it off to her. So you can see I'm also a member of a couple of other teams, that client portal requests team. So here's the appointment request that was just sent. So I'm a member of that team. You could have many people be members of that, and they can reply and say, how is Thursday at 3 o'clock? Okay. And the same thing is true of the medications. There's a medication renewal. Yeah. So no more medication for you, or whatever you want to send back. Or yes, this has been called into Walgreens, or whatever you want to put in. And again, that's most of our customers set that up so it's members of their nursing team are handling that. So appointment reminders, and Heather, you can make sure I tell them the same thing I told you last week. Appointment reminders are simply another URL that you go to. It's going to be, when it's set up, it's reminders dot whatever you use to log into Echo right now. So I'll go log in. That's just our splash screen, but the look and feel is same as Echo Vantage. The reminders are there are 2 different types of reminders. There are appointment reminders, and then scheduled, which is kind of a misnomer. Appointments are really repeated appointments is the best way to think about it. Recurring appointments, and then scheduled are really ad hoc or one-time messages.
Yeah,
So
that tab is really kind of, yeah, it needs to be
Yeah.
renamed.
It really should be recurring and one time. But
Yeah.
so
We'll get that in the
unfortunately,
queue. We'll get
yeah.
that in the queue to be
yeah,
continued.
unfortunately, it takes a while to get changes made for this tool because we originally released it for Clinician's Desktop. So everything we do to update it, we have to do twice because we still have some customers using Clinician's Desktop and using appointment reminders. So I just don't want to get your hopes up that that'll appear in version 3.43. Okay. But to set these up, you'll notice I have a couple that are green. These are active. Those are actually going to go out. If I go to case management, here's where I enter the title of that. I have a button to enable or disable that. Oops, I did that. Okay, enable it or disable it, and then I can send out my message. Okay. So that's a bad one. Let me do outpatient Conway 1 day. Okay, so the one thing you can do with these is you can layer them. So if you want to send somebody a reminder 5 days before their appointment, one 3 days before their appointment, and one day, the day before their appointment, you can have 3 different appointment reminders. So my message is going to be the text that you want to go out. Thing to keep in mind with these is you want to make sure they don't exceed your maximum text message length that your internet provider has on your account, because if it does, it will break it into 2 appointments, 2 messages, and you will pay twice for them. Okay? It also allows you to embed tokens in the message. So this $ first name will substitute the client's first name. There's a $ last name, activity date, and start time. So this would go out. If I sent this to Rick about his appointment tomorrow, it would say, "Dear Rick, this is a reminder for your appointment at the Conway office on December 1st at 3 p.m. Please call if you need to change this appointment." Okay. You can specify how many days in advance and at what time you want to send it. And then the communication types, there typically organizations will send that to a cell phone, but some organizations we've found will have clients with multiple cell phones and they only want it to go to one. So they may set up a separate communication type of SMS. And there's some considerations when you're thinking about that. If you want to have a separate entry, it means you have to put in a separate entry every time you put in a new client. Okay. If you want to copy everybody's cell number to SMS, we can do that for you as a script, or you can do that if you want to. Then, clicking the wrong button here. The next section is where you're going to describe which services, or excuse me, I should say events, because it's based on scheduled events, should get those messages. So I can choose the program codes, and I can do that using the usual drop-down list that's the convention in Echo Vantage, but I can also do bulk entry. So if I wanted this to go out to all of my codes except crisis appointments, I could select all of those and then unselect crisis and not have to go back through and do each individual. You'll notice there's also an option for no code entered. That's because when you create an event, you don't necessarily have to have a program code to create that event. So that would include those services that have been scheduled that meet all the other criteria but don't have a code. This is for my Conway office, so I just have the one location code. And then it lists all my activity codes. Okay, so I can, again, do that using the bulk, or I can do it by selecting, each individual service, activity, I should say. The other thing you could do is if you wanted this to go out to every activity except, let's say, crisis, you could just enter crisis and exclude that selected value. So it'll go to everything else. Attendance codes, well, we don't want to send these to people that have already canceled, or we already know they're no-show, or they're already here. So I just have them going out as pending, or if there's no attendance code. And then recipient codes, the same thing. So that's how we set those up. Let me just save that one. And then what will happen is that will go out every day at 6 o'clock before the day before that person's appointment, if the appointment's in Conway. So scheduled appointments are one-time messages. I have a couple of examples here. This one's a cancellation message for Kathy Bunker. So Kathy Bunker was going to be out of the office on September 29th. And I wanted to send a message to everybody that had an appointment scheduled with her, letting her know she'll be out of the office on September 29th. Please call to reschedule your appointment. I can choose to send that at a specific date and time, or I can just have it send now. So it goes out once I've saved. Communication type selection's the same. And there are a couple of different options here, and I'll explain that by showing you a couple of examples. In this case, I want it to go to all clients, but I'm going to filter it so it only goes to clients that have a service scheduled with Kathy Bunker on 9/29. Okay. Another example, here's one. This is going to go to all clients. So Hurricane Ian is going to hit, will be closed on Tuesday, September 27th. I'm going to send that message now, but I just selected all clients, and that will go to everybody in your that has an active cell number. You can also send it to individual clients. So here, I want to send a text message to Dorothy that said, "We missed you for your September 23rd appointment. Please call us at this number to reschedule." Same criteria as the others, but by choosing single client and Dorothy Gale, it'll just go to Dorothy. Okay. And one more similar to that for John Barry. I might want to send him a message saying, there's new information in the client portal. Please go to this location to review the message. Okay. And that's just going out to John Barry.
Is there any way to track those that you actually sent them?
Yes. Under logs, you'll be able to search by day for those messages. There are also tables that there is a table called the SMS logs table, and that will show you all of the messages that have been sent. So it would show the phone number it was sent to, the message, the status, and that table also includes the event ID. So from the event ID, you can link back to the client ID because that's going to be the event. And Heather, I think I sent you or maybe Rick sent on the list of the table descriptions. Did you get that document? It was a couple of days after our call because
I'm not
Yes,
familiar
I
with
didn't
that,
get it.
but
Yeah.
I didn't get it from you, but because the email you sent me didn't
was-
go through.
yeah, it didn't go through. I remember that wouldn't go through.
Yeah,
Somebody
but-
sent it on to you on my behalf, I think.
yes. Yep, I believe Megan did.
Okay. So Miranda and Haley, we do have we do have a document that describes the tables where the message information, the service component configuration, and then the logs are maintained. The cost of this, there's no cost for the setup. You just pay 1.5 cents per message. And the way that works is you fund a bank at $750. As the messages are sent out, we decrement your account by 1.5 cents for each message. When we get to approximately $200 balance, Rick would send you an email letting you know that your balance is getting low. Okay. And then once you authorize us to replenish that, and most customers replenish it to about the $750, then we'll reset your account and Cheryl will send you an invoice for that amount. So we've had a couple of instances where accounts have suddenly gotten down below zero, but we can fix that. We fix that usually the same day as long as you authorize us to replenish that. Since a lot of people ask this, we do not have an automatic refresh on that account. We do have to notify you. We did it early on, and we had some customers that were surprised that when they got down to $100, they suddenly got a bill for $650 to replenish their account. So we got rid of that feature, even though they'd signed a contract that said they wanted it. It just, people forget, right? Or don't want to have to pay for that on that date. Questions?
I haven't used it, but I did test it with a couple of our managers and it worked great. I know Miranda, you guys use it.
Yep, I think we just need to talk about maybe excluding some activities.
Sure.
Yeah, there is an art to setting these up, so to make sure that you get exactly what you want. And you have to kind of think through that.
Haley, do you guys use it at all, or are you thinking of using it?
Yeah, we don't right now, but definitely we want to in the future.
Hey. Do you have any other questions for me?
No, I think you filled our heads with lots of information and
Yep.
I greatly
Stuff.
appreciate it.
And thank you for not grilling me as hard as you grilled Alan.
I'm gonna stop the recording now, folks, just so you know. All right, I think we're recording. Yes, we should be.
Let me share my screen. And we'll look at logging into Echo Vantage. Why did login fail? Probably I'm still logged into something else. I am. Okay. So the configuration is done over here under client engagement. So for when you get if you use Informs and the client portal, this is where you'll configure whether you're going to use it and then which components you want people to have access to. Okay. You will also set up your appointment requests, your teams for your appointments request and medication renewal. And there are instructions in the document I'll send over because you do obviously have to create the team before you can complete this screen. And then the other thing that document will tell you is do not change the reset email password, the email from. That is a whitelisted address. And the only time you should change that is if the SAS team informs you that something has to be changed. And then under Informs, you can choose to enable the email links or not. Again, don't change the Informs link email from. The default is 1 day that you have the link valid, but you can modify that if you need to. Okay. So that's where we do the client engagement setup. There are a couple of other steps. If you're going to use tablets or other devices as kiosks in your waiting room, you can set these up here. So if I look at this one, you can name that device. You put in a username and a password, okay? And that's all you need to set that up. If I create a new one, you'll notice there are two options here. I can use this as a person, and that's actually used in placements, which I don't think any of you are using, but you'll name your device, iPad number 4, username, password, and confirm password. My suggestion is, unless you have a reason not to do that, that you keep your passwords the same for all of those devices. It just makes it that much less confusing. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind is, why do I have iPad number 2 twice? Somebody's been messing with my system. Great. Okay. Fix that. And you'll also notice the other one that's real popular is where is it? Is it person, device, Kindle Fires, because those are $39 from Amazon most of the time. And if somebody puts one of those in their backpack and takes off with it, you're not as nearly as upset if it's an iPad. So that's how you set those up. And then when you're going to provide that to a client, you would have somebody in your organization go in and log in. Let's choose iPad number 1. iPad 1. They would put in the password and log in. And now whoever that client is that's assigned to that device would have that those forms to complete. Okay.
So they log into Echo EHR.
No, Yes, they log right into the regular Echo EHR.
So do
Okay.
you have to create a user in
Nope.
that SaaS
Nope.
portal
That's
or
what-
just because it's
Nope.
in?
It's a
Here.
supplemental user will do that. It doesn't,
Okay.
you don't have to, you don't have a separate login.
Okay,
Let's see which one this is. Close that. There are some personal emails coming up here. Let's go back to Echo Vantage. There are a couple of other steps that you need to make sure you take. And one is if you want people to be able to set up the client portal for clients. Be able to use this screen. You need to go into configuration, permissions, and enable client app access. And that's all in the directions.
Can you go back a minute to like putting that form onto, let's say that the iPad? And
Sure.
so like, okay, so the front desk is gonna put that form on the iPad and they're gonna
Yes.
log in. Can you go back to that part? Like,
Sure.
where did they log in? So pretend they got the iPad.
So they have the iPad in their hand. What
Yep,
they do is they would go back, they would go into the same Echo Vantage login, okay? But they would
Okay.
see, let me close this.
same as if they were logging in as
Log into Echo
themselves.
Vantage, right? So go into ST. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Let's fix that. Where is Echo
Sorry,
Vantage?
I'm slightly confused, excuse me, but you're talking about a client logging in now?
Yeah, the client doesn't log into the pet tablet. That's done by
The front.
somebody in your organization.
Right,
The
somebody logs
staff.
in for them and hands them the tablet, right? Yeah,
So what they would do is instead of, do you use single sign-on? Or do you go here and see username and password?
right, username and password.
Okay, so instead of putting in your username and password, you would select the username for one of those devices.
Gotcha.
Okay,
That's where I was confused.
That's
So
where I was
that will
confused
take
at
in-
first too, because I was like, wait a minute. But then
Yeah.
that's nice, because then you could just create a shortcut on your tablets.
yes, you can. One other thing I want to point out, and this is something that you, if you adopt, if you start using Informs with the client, with the tablets, there is one thing that I guess development didn't think of. Oh, I'll get out of this, sorry. Try again. This again. So let me go to another client. I'll go to John Barry. Oops. When I go to John, and if I want to share a form, let's suppose I want to share that on, I'm gonna clear that, on iPad number 1. This tells me that it's in use, okay? But there's no place on this screen that I can go to know who hasn't logged out, okay? So if you're going to use it, let Rick know, and I can get this form installed for you. That is, there it is. Device assignments. So that will show me that BH iPad and iPad number 1 are assigned to these clients. So you can go in, search for client code JLD000, and go back up here and say Dorothy's done with that. I can clear it. Right. And now when I go back to the form, it shows me that device is no longer.
That's
in.
nice.
Mhm.
Someday I'll get really, really clever and figure out how to have a button here that will automatically clear it for you, but I just don't have time to sit sit around and try to figure out what all those tables are and how they link. And if you want a project, you want something to present at peer-to-peer next year, there you go. You can.
So do you think there'll be a peer-to-peer next year?
I sure hope so. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the important important things that we do, and it's been that way for over 20 years. I will say, with my very short experience with this organization, they're not afraid to spend money, so I don't think that that's one of the things that they would cut out as a cost savings measure. And I'm pretty sure we can make the case that this is one of the most important things we do with our customers all year long. You know, it was originally created just to get people together. And after we'd done it for a couple of years, the big benefit we recognized for us was it made us more accountable. Because if we have to see you face to face for 3 days, if we haven't been returning your support calls on time or getting your customizations done, it's not nearly as much fun as if we take you all out bowling and everybody has a great time. So it really has contributed a lot to Echo's culture. And I think we can make that case to the new ownership that this is not something we want to get rid of. But it's the future. Who knows what the future is going to bring? Well,
Right.
True.
True.
I'm
Well,
stopping.
thank you so much, Scott, because this has been very, very informative.
well, great. I'm glad it was useful to you. And I'll get those documents to Rick so he can send them on to you.